The sun beat down on the dusty shooting range as Sophia Carter stepped onto the field, her boots caked with farm mud and an old flannel jacket draped over her shoulders. She didn't look like a competitor. She looked like she had wandered off the nearest farm. The polished professionals surrounding her couldn't hide their laughter. Whispers spread through the crowd, and Jack Grant, the reigning state champion, shot her a mocking glance. "Looks like she thinks this is the county fair," he smirked, his friends snickering along with him. Sophia heard every word, the laughter, the doubt, the disdain, but she didn't flinch. Her hands, though rough from years of farm work, gripped her father's old hunting rifle with a calm, unshakable resolve. She wasn't here for the applause or the recognition. She was here for one reason only: to prove something to herself. As the crowd continued to murmur, Sophia walked to the registration table, her steps steady, her heart steady. The old man behind the clipboard raised an eyebrow, barely masking his skepticism. "You sure you're in the right place, miss?" he asked, as though questioning her very presence. Sophia gave a small nod. "Yes, sir. I'm here to compete," she replied, her voice unwavering. No one took her seriously. No one saw the fire burning behind her blue eyes, the quiet determination that ran deeper than any polished rifle or designer gear. They thought she was just a farm girl. But as Sophia raised that rifle, pulled the trigger, and shattered the silence, everything changed. The world would soon realize that Sophia Carter was a force to be reckoned with. When Sophia Carter's name was called, the crowd fell into an uneasy hush. It wasn't anticipation they felt. It was curiosity, the kind reserved for a spectacle they were sure would end in failure. The polished professionals, the seasoned shooters, and most importantly, Jack Grant, the reigning state champion, had already written her off. She was just a farm girl with worn-out boots and a rifle that looked as if it had seen better days. Everyone was waiting for the inevitable misfire, the missed target, the embarrassment. Jack stood off to the side, arms crossed, his expression one of smug amusement. He had made his mark as the unbeatable champion, and no one, certainly not a girl dressed in faded denim and a battered cap, was going to change that. He leaned over to a friend, his voice loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Watch her miss the target completely. This is going to be good." Laughter spread like wildfire, but it wasn't the kind of laughter that uplifted. It was the kind that stripped away any hope she had of being taken seriously. Sophia, however, wasn't listening to the mockery. She wasn't even aware of the whispered jokes or the eyes watching her every move. All she could hear was the steady rhythm of her own breath, the familiar hum of her father's voice in her memory. The shooting range was silent, but in her mind she was back on the farm. The afternoon spent with her father shooting tin cans off fence posts, his words still echoing in her ears. "The bullet listens to your heart. Stay steady. Trust the work you've put in." The tension of the moment didn't rattle her. It grounded her. This was what she had trained for. With a calmness that belied the pressure, Sophia took her position at the firing line. The world around her seemed to fade away. Her grip on the rifle was firm, her aim steady. She adjusted her stance, took a deep breath, and focused. She wasn't thinking about the mocking crowd, the sneers from the seasoned shooters, or the doubt that had been cast upon her. She was thinking only of the target in front of her, the sound of her father's voice, and the trust she had in herself. And then, in a single breathless moment, she pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, slicing through the air with a sharpness that cut through the tension. Time seemed to freeze. There was only the sound of the shot, nothing else. The crowd held its breath, unsure of what had just happened. Then, as if on cue, the scoreboard flickered. The numbers flashed. Sophia Carter, the farm girl no one had taken seriously, had just broken the state record with her first shot. For a long electric moment, no one moved. Not a sound. Even the wind seemed to stop, as though the very air around the shooting range understood that something extraordinary had just occurred. The disbelief was palpable. Eyes darted to the scoreboard, double-checking the result. Could it be true? Was it possible? Jack's confident smirk vanished in an instant. He stared at the scoreboard, his mind unable to process the reality of what he had just witnessed. Sophia had done the unthinkable. The girl who had been laughed at, ridiculed, and dismissed had just shattered his seemingly unbreakable record. A gasp rippled through the stands. Murmurs and whispers spread like wildfire, filling the space with a noise that had been absent just moments before. Sophia, however, did not flinch. She did not celebrate. She didn't even smile. She simply lowered her rifle with the same quiet dignity she had carried in from the beginning, stepped back from the firing line, and waited. In contrast, Jack's face was a mask of disbelief and frustration. His jaw clenched, his body tense with anger. He pushed away from the post where he had been leaning, striding toward the officials, demanding to see the calibration of the equipment. "There's no way that score is real," he barked, his voice tinged with panic. The officials scrambled to check the equipment, but after double-checking, they confirmed the unthinkable. Sophia Carter had not only matched the record, she had obliterated it. The world had just changed, and Sophia Carter had made sure that no one could ignore her. Her shot wasn't just a victory. It was a statement. She had proven that it wasn't the equipment, the background, or the appearance that made a champion. It was the heart, the quiet strength, and the relentless belief in yourself that could defy every expectation. And in that moment, Sophia Carter was no longer the underdog. She was the future. Jack Grant couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. The scoreboard flashed in bright red, confirming the unthinkable. Sophia Carter, the farm girl in muddy boots and a faded cap, had not only matched his record, she had shattered it. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed in disbelief. The laughter and mockery that had once filled the air now seemed distant and irrelevant. It was as if the ground beneath him had shifted, and he was struggling to find his footing. A rush of anger surged through him. He had built his entire identity around being the champion, around being the one no one could beat. For years he had stood at the top, looking down on the competition. He had trained harder than anyone, honed his skills to perfection. And now a girl who didn't even belong in the same league had just stolen everything from him in a single shot. It was too much to process. Without thinking, Jack stormed toward the officials, his face flushed with frustration. "There's no way that score is real," he barked, his voice raw with disbelief. "The machine must be broken. Check it again." He stood there, fists clenched, as the officials scrambled to reset the system. Confusion spreading among them. They were flustered, unsure of how to handle the situation, but they had no choice but to comply. Sophia stood silently watching as the chaos unfolded around her. She didn't look angry or defensive. She didn't feel the need to justify herself. Her gaze was steady, calm, her hands resting loosely by her side. The noise and confusion seemed to melt away as she stood in quiet dignity, her focus unshaken. She had done what she came to do. She didn't need the validation of others. The score was clear. She had won, and that was all that mattered. The officials took their time double-checking the equipment, reconfirming the results, and after what felt like an eternity, they reluctantly nodded. It was real. The scoreboard wasn't malfunctioning. Sophia Carter had indeed set a new state record, and Jack Grant's reign had come to an abrupt and humiliating end. The crowd, who had been on the edge of their seats, erupted into murmurs, some in disbelief, some in awe. Jack's smirk had completely vanished. He stood there staring at the officials, his pride crumbling with each passing second. The champion he once was felt like a distant memory slipping through his fingers. How could this be happening? How had he allowed someone like Sophia, someone he had laughed at, mocked, and dismissed, to take what was rightfully his? But even as the realization hit him, Jack wasn't ready to admit defeat. His ego refused to let go. He turned back to face Sophia, his expression hardening. He would not let her get away with this so easily. With every ounce of his being, he wanted to hold on to his title, his pride, and prove that this was just a fluke, a mistake. But Sophia, with her quiet composure, didn't even acknowledge his presence. She simply lowered her rifle, her face unreadable, and stepped back from the line. In that moment, it wasn't just the score that had been defeated. It was Jack's sense of invincibility, his arrogance, and his belief that no one could challenge him. Sophia had done more than break a record. She had broken him. As the officials confirmed the results, and the crowd's murmurs grew louder, Jack stood frozen, his hands trembling at his sides. The laughter had shifted to respect and fear. Sophia had proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that true strength wasn't about the gear, the attitude, or the reputation. It was about who you were inside and how far you were willing to go to prove it. Jack's response to Sophia's triumph was telling. Instead of celebrating, he moved back in defeat, his pride crushed under the weight of his own humiliation. Sophia, on the other hand, remained calm, unfazed, and composed. She had done what she came for, and the world, or at least everyone at that shooting range, would never look at her the same way again. The tension in the air was palpable as the event organizers announced the impromptu challenge, a head-to-head showdown between Sophia and Jack. One last chance for the reigning champion to reclaim his pride. The crowd, still reeling from Sophia's unexpected triumph, roared in approval. They were hungry for more. Hungry to see whether Sophia's record-breaking shot had been a fluke, or whether she could prove her worth once again. Jack, now visibly shaken, stepped forward with a forced grin, trying to mask the unease that gnawed at him. "Sounds good to me," he said, his voice betraying just a hint of nervousness as he glanced at Sophia. His confidence was clearly shaken, but he wasn't about to back down in front of the crowd. He had spent years as the unbeatable champion, and he would be damned if he let a farm girl steal that from him. The rules were simple. Each contestant would have 3 shots with the highest combined score winning. The targets were set at impossible distances, the kind of challenge even seasoned professionals hesitated to attempt. This wasn't just about the shots anymore. It was about pride, reputation, and who would stand as the true champion. Sophia stood at the line first, the weight of the moment settling into her bones. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on her, the expectations, the pressure, but she shut it all out. In her mind, she wasn't standing on a world-class shooting range. She was back on the farm by the old fence with her father's steady hand on her shoulder. The world around her slowed down. She heard his voice again, clear and reassuring. "Trust yourself, Sophia. The bullet listens to your heart." With a deep breath, Sophia raised the rifle. She adjusted her stance, lined up her shot, and squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew, striking the target dead center with a clean, precise hit. The crowd erupted into chaos, but Sophia's focus never wavered. She didn't look up, didn't smile, didn't celebrate. She simply reloaded and prepared for the next shot. Her second shot rang out just as perfectly as the first, another bullseye. The crowd was beside themselves now, but Sophia remained unfazed, her hands steady as ever. She loaded the rifle for the final shot, her heart calm, her mind clear. She raised the rifle one last time, took another deep breath, and fired. The shot hit so close to the center that the officials had to double-check before awarding her the full points. Another perfect shot. 3 shots. 3 bullseyes. Sophia had done it, a flawless performance. Jack watched from a few feet away, visibly sweating, his self-assured smile replaced by an expression of disbelief. His hands were shaking as he loaded his rifle, the weight of his impending failure starting to sink in. He had been the champion for so long, and now the title seemed to slip through his fingers like sand. He aimed for his first shot, the pressure mounting, and fired. It hit the target, but not nearly close enough to the center. A sigh of relief went through the crowd. It seemed Sophia had made a statement. Jack's second shot was even worse, landing further off the mark. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. It was becoming clear Jack wasn't going to recover. His hands trembled as he aimed his third and final shot. This had to be perfect. But when the shot rang out, it hit the target, but it wasn't even close to the center. It was over. The scoreboard flashed. Sophia had scored a perfect game while Jack had barely managed a fraction of her score. The silence that followed was deafening. No one cheered. No one moved. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. Sophia stood back from the line, her expression calm, her composure unshaken. She had proven her worth, not just to Jack, but to everyone. Watching Jack, on the other hand, stood there in disbelief. His pride shattered his identity as the champion crumbling before him. The crowd's focus had shifted completely. What had once been a battle between the reigning champion and the underdog was now a story of redemption and humility. Sophia Carter had shown them all what true strength was, not in arrogance, but in quiet confidence and unyielding determination. The announcer's voice broke the silence, his tone crackling with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen, your champion today, Sophia Carter." The crowd erupted into thunderous applause, celebrating not just the victory, but the journey that had led her to this moment. Jack's friends, who had once laughed with him, now stood awkwardly in the background, unsure of where to look. The world had just witnessed the rise of a new champion, and Sophia Carter had proven that in the end, actions spoke louder than words. Sophia Carter's victory at the shooting range was about more than just breaking a record. It was about breaking every preconceived notion that had been placed upon her. Her win wasn't just a technical triumph. It was a spiritual and emotional one that shattered the barriers of doubt and mockery that had surrounded her from the moment she stepped onto the field. The crowd, which had once whispered and laughed at her, was now silent in awe, and Sophia remained as composed as ever. She didn't need to boast or celebrate her victory. Her silence spoke louder than any applause ever could. In her calm, deliberate manner, she had proven that perseverance, self-confidence, and belief in one's own abilities could conquer the harshest judgment and the deepest cynicism. When Sophia first arrived, she was the subject of mockery. Her appearance, the mud on her boots, and the weathered look of her old flannel jacket were all signs of a life on a farm far removed from the pristine, polished professionals who surrounded her. Jack Grant, the reigning champion, had ridiculed her without hesitation, as had the others. They thought she was nothing more than a joke, a distraction, someone to laugh at, not a serious contender. But Sophia didn't let their words or their expectations weigh her down. She didn't let their doubts become her own. She stepped up to that firing line with nothing but a deep sense of self-belief and the knowledge that she had prepared for this moment. The years of practice, the hours spent shooting tin cans with her father, the lessons on patience and precision, all of it culminated in the perfect moment. Sophia's victory was not a result of arrogance or a desire to prove anyone wrong. It was simply the product of trusting herself and the quiet confidence that comes with knowing your worth. Her flawless performance in the head-to-head showdown against Jack was proof of this inner strength. The pressure, the crowd, the mocking glances, none of it affected her. She hit 3 perfect bullseyes, one after another, while Jack, the so-called unbeatable champion, faltered under the weight of his own pride. Sophia didn't gloat, didn't revel in his defeat. Instead, she remained calm and dignified, a reflection of the true champion she had become. But the victory wasn't just about the scoreboard or the perfect shots. It was about how she had earned the respect of everyone in that arena. Not through grand gestures, but through the quiet resilience and unwavering belief in herself. She had proven that sometimes the most powerful way to silence your critics is simply to show them that their opinions don't matter. For Sophia, the triumph was as much spiritual as it was physical. She had faced down years of doubt, judgment, and mockery, and emerged stronger. Her victory was a testament to the power of persistence, the value of believing in yourself even when no one else does. The crowd's reaction from stunned silence to loud applause reflected the truth that Sophia had known all along. Confidence, hard work, and self-assurance are the true measures of greatness. In the end, Sophia's victory was a resounding one, not just on the scoreboard, but in the hearts and minds of everyone who had once doubted her. She had proven that success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become along the way. Jack Grant had always been untouchable. For years, he stood as the undisputed champion in the world of competitive shooting, a figure of near invincibility. His confidence was unshakable, his skills honed to perfection, and his reputation was something he wore like a badge of honor. No one dared challenge him, at least no one who could actually stand a chance. He had built his identity on being the best, the one who could never be outdone. But as Sophia Carter, the farm girl he had so casually dismissed, shattered his record with a single shot, everything Jack knew about himself began to crumble. At first, it was hard for him to accept what had just happened. His mind raced as he stared at the scoreboard, unable to process the numbers that flashed in front of him. Sophia, with her faded jeans and muddy boots, had just beaten him. The same girl he had laughed at, the same one he had mocked and underestimated, was now the record holder. The weight of the defeat was crushing. It wasn't just the loss that stung. It was the realization that he had been so blinded by his own arrogance that he hadn't seen her coming. Jack had always believed that no one could touch him, and yet here he was watching as his own pride and sense of superiority disintegrated in the wake of Sophia's triumph. The initial response was typical Jack, a knee-jerk defense of his ego. He stormed toward the officials, demanding that the equipment be rechecked. His voice was laced with frustration, disbelief, and anger. "There's no way that score is real," he barked. "The machine must be broken. Check it again." But the officials, though flustered by the unexpected turn of events, had no choice but to double-check the readings. When they confirmed that Sophia had indeed shattered his record, Jack's reaction was less one of surprise and more one of a wounded pride. It wasn't just that he had lost it. It was the way in which he had lost Sophia, with her quiet confidence and unassuming demeanor, had not only bested him on the field, but had done so with a grace that Jack had never shown. He watched as she lowered her rifle, her face unreadable, stepping back from the line with the same calm dignity she had carried with her from the moment she arrived. She didn't celebrate, didn't gloat, didn't revel in his defeat. It was as if she had expected this outcome all along, and that only made it worse for Jack. As the crowd erupted in disbelief, Jack stood frozen. The cheers for Sophia felt like a punch to his gut. Each clap and whistle, a reminder that he was no longer the champion. His entire identity had been built on the assumption that no one could surpass him, and now that assumption had been shattered. For the first time in his career, Jack found himself questioning his place in the world. He had been the king, the one everyone looked up to, and now he was just another shooter, one who had been outperformed by someone he had considered an outsider. In the aftermath of his loss, Jack found himself at a crossroads. His friends who had once laughed alongside him now stood awkwardly in silence, unsure of how to react. Jack's father, a man who had always expected nothing less than perfection, was nowhere to be seen. He had always been the one to hold Jack to the highest standards, but now there was nothing left to say. Jack's world had been built on pride, and now it was crumbling. But as he stood there, his heart heavy with the sting of defeat, something began to shift inside him. He watched Sophia, who was being congratulated by the crowd and approached by a scout for the National Shooting Federation. There was no bitterness in her eyes, no smug satisfaction, just a quiet, unwavering strength. For the first time, Jack saw her not as a farm girl, not as an outsider, but as someone who had earned her place at the top, someone who had worked harder than he had ever known, someone whose humility and determination had made her more than a worthy opponent. She had become a true champion. The change in Jack was subtle at first, but undeniable. He began to realize that his defeat was not just a loss in the competition. It was a lesson in humility. He had underestimated Sophia, and in doing so he had failed to see the value in what truly made a champion. It wasn't just skill. It was heart, determination, and the ability to rise above the noise and expectations of others. Jack, once so certain of his superiority, now found himself facing the harsh truth. There was more to being a champion than winning. It was about how you carried yourself, how you treated others, and how you responded to defeat. As Sophia stood off to the side, quiet and composed, Jack felt a deep, unspoken respect for her. He had spent years building walls around his ego, but now he saw how fragile those walls were. Perhaps he thought it was time to let them come down. As the applause for Sophia Carter's victory continued to echo throughout the shooting range, she stood silently, her heart still racing from the adrenaline of the competition. The crowd's excitement was palpable, but Sophia remained calm, not allowing the attention or the noise to overwhelm her. She had come to prove something to herself, not to anyone else. And now that she had done it, she was ready to leave. But the moment she turned away from the firing line, a man approached her. Ethan Whitmore, a scout for the National Shooting Federation, cut through the crowd with an intensity that seemed to clear the path before him. His sharp eyes locked onto Sophia, and his presence alone commanded attention. He was dressed in a dark green polo shirt and had the air of someone accustomed to making quick, decisive judgments. As he reached her, he extended his hand, his gaze not just appreciative but filled with genuine interest. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice smooth and authoritative, yet with a trace of respect. "Have you ever considered professional competition?" Sophia paused for a moment, taking in the man before her. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was the very thing she had dreamed of when she first picked up her father's rifle all those years ago, the opportunity to prove that she belonged in the world of professional shooting. But even now, as the reality of her victory settled in, she wasn't sure what to make of it. Her heart still beat fast, the echo of the competition hanging in the air. She had come here to compete, to show herself that she could do this. The recognition from Jack Grant's defeat, and now from Ethan Whitmore's direct approach, felt like a distant echo to the quiet triumph she had already experienced. She had done what she set out to do, but this was something else entirely. "I just came here to shoot." "Sophia," replied, her voice steady but with a hint of confusion. Her hands, still dusty from the farm work she had done earlier that morning, gripped her father's rifle with a mixture of nostalgia and disbelief. How had she gone from being the laughingstock to having a man like Ethan Whitmore stand in front of her, offering a chance that could change everything? Ethan chuckled, a rare sound from someone whose demeanor usually carried a serious edge. He wasn't deterred by her reserved response. "Well, Miss Carter, you did more than just shoot. You changed everything today," he said, his tone now tinged with admiration. "What you just did out there, that was something special. The kind of talent the Federation is always on the lookout for. I think you could go far in this sport if you want to." For a brief moment, Sophia stood frozen. The world seemed to pause around her as she processed his words. It wasn't just about winning the competition anymore. It was about what came next, what opportunities lay ahead, and whether she was ready to step into a world that just hours ago she hadn't even considered. She had spent so long proving herself in a small, personal way, to her father, to herself, and to the people who had doubted her. But now someone was offering her something more. A professional career. A future in a sport that she had loved for as long as she could remember. The weight of the decision hit her then. She could feel the gravity of the opportunity before her, an opportunity that she had earned not by fitting in, but by standing out. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the early mornings spent in the field with her father, The quiet hours spent honing her skills, the ridicule she had faced and the pride she had fought for. It was all leading to this moment. Before she could respond, the crowd continued to buzz around her. The media had already begun to swarm, eager to get the first statement from the woman who had just beaten the state champion. Phones were pulled out, cameras flashed, and reporters shouted questions. But in the midst of the chaos, Sophia's focus remained clear. She had always known that there would come a time when her skill would speak for itself. Now she was standing at the edge of a new chapter in her life, a chapter that could take her far beyond the farm and into the professional world. Ethan Whitmore watched her, giving her space to absorb the moment. He had seen raw talent before, but something about Sophia's quiet determination and humility told him she had the potential to become one of the sport's greats. This wasn't just about shooting, it was about resilience, about never giving up, and about the kind of person who could withstand the weight of pressure and still perform at their best. "I'll give you some time to think about it," Ethan said, sensing her internal struggle. "But I want you to know that this is a rare opportunity. Not everyone gets a chance like this." Sophia nodded, her mind racing. She wasn't ready to make a decision yet, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life was about to change. The world she had once been on the outside of was now opening its doors to her, and the journey ahead would be as unpredictable and challenging as the path that had brought her here. For the first time, Sophia felt ready for what was to come. And with that, she stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Not just as a competitor, but as a professional. As Sophia Carter stepped away from the shooting range, the weight of the moment settled into her bones. She had done it. She had shattered records, silenced her critics, and proven that she was more than just a farm girl with an old hunting rifle. But as the applause faded and the media buzzed around her, she realized that this victory, this moment of triumph, was only the beginning. The invitation from Ethan Whitmore, the scout from the National Shooting Federation, had opened a door to a world she had never imagined. And now, standing on the edge of this new world, Sophia could feel the weight of the decision that lay ahead of her. The path she had always known was simple, straightforward. It was a life spent on the farm, working with her father, learning the craft of shooting and living within the rhythms of rural life. But now everything had changed. She was being offered something far beyond her wildest dreams, a chance to enter the professional world of competitive shooting, a world that demanded more than just skill. It required discipline, sacrifice, and a level of commitment she had never had to consider before. The invitation wasn't just an opportunity to prove herself once again. It was a challenge to step out of her comfort zone and into a world where the stakes were higher, where the competition was fierce, and where success wasn't guaranteed. Sophia knew that stepping into this new world would come with its own set of struggles. The training would be intense, the pressure would be constant, and the expectations would be sky high. She would no longer be the underdog, the one who was dismissed and underestimated. In the professional world, she would be just another competitor, but one who would be watched closely, expected to deliver every single time. At the same time, Sophia realized that this was the chance of a lifetime. The road ahead was filled with possibilities. The opportunity to work with the best in the sport, to train with elite professionals, and to compete at the highest levels of the game. These were the things she had dreamed of, but had never dared to believe were within her reach. She had always thought that her place in the world of competitive shooting would be limited to weekend competitions, small-town events where she could test her skills but never truly make a mark. But now that world was opening up before her, and the future was full of promise. As she sat with her father that evening, the stars sprawling above them and the sound of the crickets filling the silence, Sophia couldn't help but feel a sense of both excitement and trepidation. Her father, who had always believed in her, sat beside her, his face soft with pride, but also with a quiet understanding. He knew the path Sophia had chosen wasn't an easy one. He had seen the struggles, the doubts, the moments when she had questioned her place in the world. But now he saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had driven her to pick up that rifle all those years ago, and the same fire that had carried her through the challenges of the day. "You've made me the proudest man alive," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I know this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." Sophia looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. His words echoed in her mind as she thought about the decision she now had to make. She had always trusted her father's wisdom, and she knew that what he said was true. This victory, this moment, wasn't the culmination of her journey. It was the start of something far bigger. It was the moment she would look back on when she stood on the podium at a national competition, when she faced off against the world's best, and when she became the champion she had always dreamed of becoming. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, and perhaps even failure. But Sophia was ready. She had faced the hardest battle already. The battle to prove herself to the world, to show that she was more than what people thought of her. And now she was ready to take on the challenge of becoming the best version of herself, to push past her limits and embrace the new opportunities that had been handed to her. As the night stretched on, and the stars blinked down from the sky, Sophia's mind raced with the possibilities. She wasn't just stepping into a new world. She was creating one for herself. A world where she was in control of her future, where she could choose her own path and define her own success. Sophia had come from humble beginnings, but she was no longer bound by them. She had made it this far, and with every step forward she knew she was destined for even greater things. This was just the beginning, and everything was about to change. When Sophia Carter stepped into the elite training program offered by the National Shooting Federation, she knew that the journey ahead would be nothing like what she had experienced before. The victory that had catapulted her from a farm girl to a contender in the world of professional shooting had been just the beginning. Now, as she entered this intense training environment, she was about to face a new level of challenges that would test her not only physically but mentally as well. The program was demanding. Every day, Sophia pushed her body to its limits, facing grueling physical exercises designed to enhance her endurance, strength, and agility. It wasn't just about shooting anymore. It was about conditioning her body to perform under immense pressure day after day. The physical challenges were daunting: long hours of training on the range, sprints to build stamina, weightlifting to strengthen her core, and mental exercises to improve her focus and concentration. The toll it took on her body was hard to ignore, but Sophia was relentless. The pain, the exhaustion, and the doubts were all part of the process. She had trained for moments like this, and she knew that if she wanted to be the best, she had to embrace the grind. But it wasn't just her physical abilities that were being tested. The mental challenges were even more demanding. The pressure to perform at the highest level, the constant comparisons to other elite shooters, and the internal battle to maintain confidence in the face of failure were just as difficult as any physical test. There were days when Sophia felt completely overwhelmed, when the weight of the competition seemed too much to bear. She faced moments of doubt. Could she really make it in this world of professional shooters, or had her initial success simply been a fluke? There were moments when she wanted to quit, to walk away from the constant pressure and expectations, but Sophia never gave in. She remembered her father's words: "The bullet listens to your heart," and with every challenge, every setback, she found the strength to continue. The program's trainers were some of the best in the world, and they pushed Sophia harder than she had ever been pushed before. They knew that to succeed at the highest levels, she would need more than just natural talent. She would need mental fortitude, discipline, and the ability to perform under pressure. Sophia had to learn to block out distractions, to focus her mind, and to stay calm when everything around her seemed chaotic. In the heat of competition, when the stakes were highest, her mental clarity would be just as important as her physical skill. The trainers drilled her tirelessly, challenging her to maintain focus for longer stretches, to handle stress, and to think quickly on her feet. One of the toughest aspects of the program was the constant push for improvement. No matter how well she performed, there was always something to work on, always another level to reach. Sophia quickly learned that success wasn't a destination. It was a never-ending journey. Every shot, every practice session, and every mental exercise was a step forward, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. The program demanded perfection, and there were no shortcuts. Sophia had to learn to embrace the process, not just the outcome. The victories were few and far between, but each small step forward brought her closer to her goal. As the weeks passed, Sophia began to see the results of her hard work. Her body grew stronger, her endurance improved, and her shooting technique became more refined. But perhaps the biggest change was in her mindset. She had always been determined, but now she was learning how to handle the mental pressure that came with competing at the highest levels. Her focus sharpened. Her confidence grew, and she started to truly believe, that she could compete with the best in the world. In the end, Sophia realized that the challenges she faced in the training program weren't just obstacles to overcome. They were the very things that would make her a true champion. Her victory had never been a random stroke of luck. It had been the result of years of preparation, sacrifice, and unwavering persistence. The person she had been before, the quiet farm girl unsure of her place in the world, was no longer who she was. She had become someone stronger, more focused, and more capable of facing whatever challenges lay ahead. The road to greatness was long, but Sophia was ready. She had proven to herself that she had what it took to succeed, not just once, but over and over again. The journey was far from over, but now she knew exactly what it would take to reach the top. As Sophia stood at the crossroads of her future, the weight of the decision before her was almost overwhelming. The invitation to join the National Shooting Federation's elite training program, was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a chance to step into a world she had always dreamed of, but never thought possible. But as she thought about the path that lay ahead, doubts crept in. Was she truly ready for the commitment? Could she handle the pressure, the sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of perfection? She had always been determined, but now she faced the hardest question of all. Could she leave behind the life she had known and step into the unknown? The answer, she realized, had been within her all along. Sophia wasn't just a farm girl anymore. She was a force, a competitor with the strength and resolve to rise to any challenge. Her journey had already proven that she was capable of far more than anyone had ever expected. With a deep breath and a quiet confidence, Sophia knew she was ready. She wasn't just accepting an opportunity, she was claiming her place in the world of professional shooting. The road ahead would be tough, but Sophia was no longer afraid. She was prepared to change everything. The story of Sophia Carter offers powerful lessons that resonate deeply with anyone navigating the challenges of life. One of the most significant takeaways is the importance of perseverance and self-belief, especially when faced with doubt and ridicule. Sophia's journey teaches us that success is not about fitting into societal expectations or following a predetermined path. It's about trusting in our abilities and having the courage to pursue our goals, even when the world doubts us. Moreover, the story emphasizes the value of hard work and preparation. Sophia's victory wasn't a fluke. It was the result of years of dedication, both physical and mental. This reminds us that no achievement comes without effort. Finally, Sophia's decision to embrace an opportunity that challenges her comfort zone is a reminder that growth happens when we step outside of what is familiar. Life at any age offers chances for reinvention and success, but only if we're willing to take risks and face the unknown. Sophia's story is a testament to the power of resilience, self-confidence, and the willingness to evolve lessons that are timeless and relevant for us all.